It was one of those evenings where the city seemed alive in ways that mirrored the unrest in Alexander Knight's chest, the tall, cold, and ruthless CEO who had built an empire of steel and glass towers but somehow still couldn't bury the shadows of his past. And tonight, those shadows had a name: Isabella Harrington, the woman who had once been his fiancée, the woman who had left him broken and humiliated in front of the elite circle they both belonged to, the woman who had traded his love for another man's wealth when she thought Alexander would never become more than the son of a struggling contractor. But life has its ways of turning tides, and now Alexander stood at the top, the youngest billionaire in the country, yet fate had placed him in a cruel position. He had to attend Isabella's annual charity gala, an event swarmed by aristocrats, journalists, investors, and powerful names, and the whispers would crush him if he walked in alone, for society thrived on gossip, and Isabella would have loved nothing more than to see him isolated, still scarred from the heartbreak she inflicted years ago. So in a reckless move born of pride and desperation, Alexander decided to bring someone, a date, not just any date, but someone who could make Isabella doubt everything she thought she had won, yet finding that someone wasn't easy, for the polished women of high society always had motives of their own, and Alexander despised manipulation, so fate intervened in the most unexpected corner of his life, in the form of a girl he had never met before, a stranger who stumbled into his world by accident, but whose presence would soon rewrite everything he thought he knew about power, love, and redemption. Her name was Emily Carter, a girl of humble beginnings who worked 2 jobs just to pay off her late father's debts, the kind of girl who knew more about subway rides and second-hand dresses than ballrooms and designer gowns. Yet fate twisted her path when she entered the towering lobby of Knight Enterprises one rainy afternoon, drenched, holding a folder of resumes for a friend she was helping, completely unaware that the man she bumped into near the elevator was none other than Alexander Knight himself, who at first scowled at her clumsy apology, until something in her eyes, an honesty, a rawness, a spark of defiance, made him pause, and in that pause, an outrageous thought struck him, so wild he nearly laughed at himself. But desperation makes even the proudest men gamble, and Alexander, whose life was built on high-stakes gambles, suddenly asked her to meet him in his office upstairs, where under the glow of city lights he made her an offer that left Emily speechless. Pretend to be his date for the gala, play the role of someone dazzling, someone untouchable, and in return, he'd pay her enough to clear her debts twice over, an amount that could change her life forever. Yet Emily's pride resisted. She was no one's pawn, no one's toy, and she told him so with fire in her voice. But Alexander, unaccustomed to rejection, leaned forward with that dangerous smirk and told her he saw in her something rare, something real, and that perhaps she was the only one who could pull this off, because the high society sharks would never expect Alexander Knight to walk in with someone like her, and it was precisely that unpredictability that would make Isabella burn with envy. Emily wrestled with the decision, torn between dignity and desperation, because her younger brother needed tuition, the bills were piling up, and opportunities like this didn't come twice, so against her better judgment, she agreed, though with conditions. She would not sell herself, she would not be humiliated, and she would walk away the moment Alexander crossed a line, to which Alexander, amused and impressed, simply nodded, for he liked her fire more than he cared to admit, though he would never confess it, not even to himself. The week leading to the gala was a whirlwind, as Alexander's team transformed Emily into someone unrecognizable, teaching her posture, etiquette, dance, and dressing her in gowns worth more than her entire neighborhood. Yet even as the stylists tried to mold her, Emily's stubborn authenticity shone through, for she didn't fake her laughter, she didn't bow to arrogance, and she didn't let Alexander's cold commands go unchallenged. And though Alexander should have been irritated, he found himself strangely drawn to her raw spirit, a feeling he hadn't known since before Isabella shattered him. The night of the gala arrived, and the Harrington estate glittered with chandeliers, champagne, and music, as the elite of the elite gathered in gowns and tuxedos, and whispers filled the air as Alexander arrived with Emily on his arm, looking radiant in an emerald gown that hugged her frame with elegance but carried in her eyes the same defiance that had caught him days earlier, and the cameras flashed like fireworks, capturing the moment, sending waves of shock through the crowd, because no one knew her, Northwest one could place her, and speculation ran wild. Who was she? Where did she come from? How did Alexander Knight, the untouchable CEO, find her? But Emily didn't falter, she smiled with grace, she moved with quiet confidence, and though her hands trembled deep inside, she carried herself like she belonged, and it was that quiet authenticity that made her outshine every jewel and diamond in the room. Isabella, radiant as ever in her designer gown, froze when she saw them, her painted smile twitching as her eyes narrowed on Emily, and though she tried to play it cool, everyone around noticed the way her composure cracked, and for Alexander, that was the sweetest victory, yet even he hadn't expected how Emily would soon steal the night in ways that would shake the very foundations of his carefully guarded world. And so began a night where facades would crumble, truths would surface, and a girl who was never meant to belong would captiva. Not only the room, not only his ex, but perhaps the cold heart of Alexander Knight himself, though neither of them knew just how dangerous, intoxicating, and life-altering this charade would become.